Do you ever wonder why some brands keep showing up in AI answers while others are invisible? Even if your SEO is fine, there are a few key tweaks to make if you want to stay relevant in the new world where the search engines talk back.
If you're talking about AI overviews, an example, so Google's AI overviews, it was typically taking information about 89% of the time from informational-based content. That's now down to around 55%. My biggest go-to is traffic. I think, in my opinion, it's a bit of a vanity metric these days. That kind of engagement umbrella, if you like, is a much better measure of success when it comes to AI search than, getting people to the website.
In this episode, I'm joined by Joe Caley from Optix. He's a perfect example of how building trust through educational events can also generate new leads and a plethora of content all at the same time.
I think the biggest skill gap is firstly understanding how these tools actually work. Everyone can type in something into Google or ChatGPT or Gemini, for example, type in that query, type in that question and see a result. But actually understanding how exactly is that tool arriving at that result.
So if you're banging your head against the wall, trying to be seen by AI, but you're still using the old playbooks from last year, you're in the right place to get an update. Joe Caley, you just gave a webinar earlier today. I'm curious what it was about.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, this morning. It was great. It was on the topic of AI search strategies, how we can build those strategies, what we should be thinking about as marketers. A core element of that being GEO, so Generative Engine Optimization as well. And trying to educate sort of businesses and other marketers about it. It's still a little bit unfamiliar to some people. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Is there a difference between AEO and GEO, or is it basically the same thing? Answer engine, generative engine?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. We work in marketing. We love an acronym wherever possible. So yeah, they're kind of the same thing. The whole purpose behind both of them is, that layer of optimization geared towards AI tools and AI search specifically. So yeah, I would say they're pretty much the
Yeah. Engine optimization,
right.
that remains same, no matter what the first letter is.
Yeah.
How are we changing, or is there anything changing between those acronyms that we just said and traditional SEO? Is there anything we need to rehaul or shift?
Yeah, the way I like to describe GEO, AEO, whichever you'd like to define it, is more of an evolution of SEO rather than a replacement or something kind of brand new. A lot of the stuff that we recommend people, do and businesses kind of invest in terms of, improving visibility across AI search platforms is kind of what we're doing already with SEO, but just with an added kind of layer, an extra kind of layer of thought in terms of how we approach that sort of more strategically. So, it's certainly not a replacement to SEO in any way. It's that kind of next step that we should be interested in to ensure that, we're visible across those platforms as well.
Yeah, you're building on top of the foundations and the fundamentals, right? You have
Absolutely.
and at Optix, you basically handle everything SEO. And then you also have, as I was looking on your website, an AI training segment. So I definitely want to get into that. What does that include in AI training at Optix?
Yeah, sure. AI training is pretty broad, right? So, we'll try and distill it down into more kind of actionable sections. So it's something that as an agency, myself included, have been particularly passionate about developing, because I think one of the biggest question marks we see people have is, they're aware that this AI world exists. We have ChatGPT, we have Gemini, we have all these kind of tools, and that's about That's about as far as it goes. People are then sort of questioning, well, how do I make the most of those? How is my brand going to be visible? Where's my level of understanding? So we developed a really comprehensive training package, which covers about 4 to 5 different modules, focus on everything from developing marketing strategies, which is sort of my primary focus, to from a legal point of view, internally, how you're using AI tools to, help you support your professional work. And then we have this kind of element of just understanding how the tools physically work. How are they retrieving information? How are they training themselves on data sets? So it's broken down into different modules, covering every sort of element you might think of. Yeah, it's a service that we're finding increasingly popular, and we're delivering it pretty much every month in some capacity. So yeah, it's a really, really useful kind of way to help just educate people a little bit further.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's probably part of your GTM, like your go-to-market strategy is educating people. And even business owners who start to realize, wow, there's just 5 modules here, but it's a lot of information. Maybe I knew
Sure.
some based on search, but now with all of the tech involved, gosh, I need to reach out to these guys and have them do some of that for me. I want to bring that top of the funnel kind of educational piece into what you're seeing with AIO or LLMs surfacing in terms of like the percentage of top of funnel content versus bottom of funnel content.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I was doing a presentation the other day, and I wanted to incorporate actually some data around this because has changed quite a lot. When
Mm,
I look back to kind of end of 2024, start of 2025, the biggest thing we were telling people is that, AI is going to gravitate towards those longer form pieces of content, those deeper informational type pieces, your articles, your blog posts, that kind of content is where it's going to have its preference, where it's going to take content from. That has
mhm,
shifted dramatically. To kind
mm,
of back that with some stats, Ginny, if you're talking about AI overviews and examples, so Google's AI overviews, it was typically taking information about 89% of the time from informational based content. That's now down to around 55%. Whereas the
mm.
other types of content, things like transactional content, navigational content, they've obviously increased to balance that out. So the shift in the type of content, sort of where it's positioned along the funnel, that type of content where AI is retrieving information from and generated answers for those queries has, yeah, definitely shifted massively over the last 12 months for sure.
So what you're saying is when Google like AI overviews are pulling content and they're surfacing content, it is actually pulling from more of the consideration or selection or comparative, this versus that
Mm.
revenue generating content than it is from like top of funnel content. How does that impact a marketing agency or a brand's content strategy, right? Because it seems like
Sure.
pretty easy or intuitive to think that I want to educate the AI on what we do and not necessarily why we do it because that's what the rest of the funnel is for. So how does that influence content strategy?
For sure, yeah. It's definitely had a big kind of change in the way that we approach kind of developing content and developing a content strategy. Before, we'd work with a brand to really build out that longer form content with the idea of we're gaining visibility through that. And then we're sort of
Hmm.
trying to encourage people to take that next step to a conversion point, to a key service, to a product, whatever it may be. Whereas now we're kind of reversing that, so to speak, is actually we're trying to prioritize and serve and surface those service-based pages, the pages that we know we're going to convert users, we know the pages that are going to engage users the most. So rather than kind of approaching it from a funnel perspective, as it were, we're looking at the type of content that is going to be most frequently surfaced, that's going to be most used by AI, and then kind of developing a strategy around that. Obviously, the longer tail, more informational top of funnel content still really, really important, but it's just kind of balancing that a little bit more with that sort of transactional lower down the funnel content as well.
Yeah, it's almost like you reversed the strategy, I guess. Instead of
Sure,
trying
in
to
a way.
attract people at the top and then funnel them down, it's almost like we want
Yeah,
to capture the people that are already in the consideration
mm,
phase
yeah,
and then extract like what people also ask type of
absolutely.
questions to then if they don't understand something at the bottom of the funnel,
Mm.
then we can make content is almost what it sounds like. I mean, am I missing anything on that?
No, absolutely right. No, you're spot
Okay.
on. Yeah. And I think that's kind of enhanced with, we're seeing the likes of ChatGPT now introducing shopping style
Mm,
content into that platform as well, similar to how you view products within Google search engine. So, the way that those tools are evolving as well is kind of influencing how we're having to develop content to target that. Before we'd say, okay, we have a product, let's produce some content on comparisons around that product, for example. Whereas now that product's being serviced directly within those AI tools. So thinking about it sort of lower
mm.
down the funnel is really important. And yeah, it's definitely changed how we would approach developing content for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Focusing more on that, I guess, decision or like revenue generating content.
Mm.
I'm curious what sort of metrics or what sort of, yeah, what sort of metrics have you left behind, let's say in
Mm.
2025, because maybe it doesn't matter as much in this post AI world.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, my biggest go-to is traffic. I think, in
Mhm.
my opinion, it's a bit of a vanity metric these
Mm,
days. The measure of how many people are coming to the website, is not that relevant anymore. So, the
mm,
biggest things we're focusing on is that engagement. We're looking at click-through rates, we're looking at engagement rates, we're looking at, pure conversions, where their original source is from. And we're looking at, how long people are spending on pages, how long they're interacting with the site for. That kind of engagement umbrella, if you like, is a much
Mm.
better measure of success when it comes to AI search than, getting people to the website. Because, the whole purpose is, these tools surface content and showcase your brand quite often with people never having to come through to your website. So that
Yeah. Yeah.
removes that metric being that important, really.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about engagement with the brand, and I want to highlight that you're using
Mm.
brand and not necessarily service or solution. Tell me a little bit more about brand authority and like how does that play into organic growth these days as compared to, pure just optimization for a service.
Yeah, I mean, brand trust, brand authority is absolutely vital. You come to any of my talks or webinars, I probably say it far too much because of just how important it is. Building that brand trust. You think a bit from a user perspective. You take two brands identical in every way, but one
Mhm.
has this layer of trust in terms of it's visible across these other platforms. You see it in other publications. It has these awards that back up its experience. You're always as a user going to gravitate towards that brand. AI treats that in the same way. You have this kind of list of competitive brands. Every industry is competitive these days. It's going
Mm.
to look at the brands that are seen as authoritative in that space, that it knows if it goes for that brand for information, for data, for anything that it needs to generate its appropriate query, it's going to rely on that brand because it knows that it can trust the information that's being provided. So, yeah, brand trust
Mhm.
and authority, arguably at the top of the list when we're talking about optimizing a site and a business for AI search.
Yeah, I love that. And it really I think challenges brands these days to understand who they truly are and who they truly
Mhm.
speak to. What is their ICP and how is this ICP even a, like a sub persona or like a sub niche? Where does segmentation come in? Does it behoove a brand to actually have a wider umbrella, now that AI can surface even more? Or are you seeing actually diving deeper and becoming more clearly defined, more segmentation into an ICP, like which direction are you kind of seeing is the most advantageous?
It's interesting. I think there are probably quite a few brands on the smaller scale who are probably
Hmm.
asking that exact question because,
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, if somebody's searching for my sort of service or my sort of product offering or something to do with my business, AI is just going to pick the biggest brands, right? And there is certainly an argument and certainly evidence to suggest that is. And then because of that, and because we are aware that that's the kind of way that AI treats it, it gives us a bit of direction and we can say, okay, well, let's become more focused. Let's become more strategic in a particular area. It's a
Hmm.
conversation I had with one of our clients recently who is more regionally focused. They don't cover the whole of the UK. And
Hmm.
their question was exactly that. We offer this, particular service that's highly competitive. How do we actually gain visibility? And, the
Hmm.
guidance that we gave them was let's actually, sort of hone into that niche more specifically. Let's really target the locations that you are operating in. Let's target people searching for that service in those places. That's where we're
Mm.
going to see an increase in visibility rather than this wider umbrella. Yeah, for sure. I think, identifying who you are as a brand, what are the specific customers and clients you're trying to reach, integrating that into your messaging and becoming, yeah, almost more defined in those key areas, I think will benefit you in the long run for sure.
Yeah, it almost seems like you want to be the big fish in the small pond, if you want to
Right.
think of it that way, right?
Right. For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least that's what it seems. And this is particularly good news for smaller brands or regional brands, like you were saying. With building brand trust, it's not just about the messaging. How are you seeing offsite signals for authority contribute to that? Has anything changed? Like, how does offsite play into brand development?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think kind of off-site impact has necessarily changed. Sort of link building, the term that you want to use,
Hmm.
or kind of off-page kind of brand building has always had, arguably a little bit of a question mark around it in terms of its place within SEO. I think it probably
Hmm.
goes back to, some more black hat days where it was sort of a little bit dodgy. You can argue that
Right.
there's always been that importance of, external brand links, and things like that. But I think with the introduction of sort of AI search being this bigger player in the game, it sort of refocused us and actually given us some direction in terms of thinking, okay, that is actually a part of a search strategy that has more importance than it probably once did,
Mm.
particularly because we know that AI tools can pick up on those brand mentions that are not linked as well. So that adds an
Mm-hmm.
additional layer to say, okay, we want our brand to be visible across these various publications, these various authoritative, external sites. The link obviously would still be great and it's still important from a fundamental SEO point of view, but actually, seeing our brand mentioned more frequently in relevant places, yeah, has a big weight on our sort of overall performance across AI platforms these days.
You just brought up, if we have a do follow link, that's great for the fundamental SEO purposes, but brand mentions and brand citations,
Mm,
as a brand, how do I get more of those? I mean, maybe as a brand, I've done that before with some local PR updates
mhm,
or something, but maybe it's been difficult for me to do it
mm,
consistently. As a
mhm.
brand, how do I get more mentions and citations?
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of brands probably struggle with,
Yeah.
arguably more than other things. We touched on kind of digital PR being, a key sort of avenue that you can follow to kind of build brand presence. It's a kind of proven tactic. Successful outreach campaigns can really transform your performance. And then it's going back to things looking like, if you are a brand operating in a certain industry, let's look at exactly what publications are relevant in your industry, with a
Mm,
certain site that people gravitate towards to compare businesses, to compare services. Let's look at being mentioned there. Uh, let's look at kind of other avenues where we have content that may have been, applicable to a certain, external location in terms of, taking information from that content, hosting that content separately. Is there an
mm,
opportunity to build a relationship there? I think existing kind of clients is a bit underrated as well. We worked with a brand
mm,
recently who, up until kind of not that long ago, we discovered had an absolutely incredible list of clients that they've worked with in the past that they hadn't mentioned at all. So trying to
mm,
build that sort of relationship with the clients they've worked with, not necessarily exchanging links, but at least communicating that there's a partnership there. That's something that
mm,
these tools can pick up on. And the kind of value speaks for itself. We were doing some analysis for a client the other day, and actually some of their visibility in ChatGPT queries they were being shown from, their brand was actually being mentioned via an external source. It was taking information about their brand, not from their own website, from an external source.
mm.
Very relevant one, which is great, but it just kind of highlights the value of, external presence for your brand and how important it is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're bringing up something key that I want to highlight, which is one, partnerships. Who have
Mm,
you done business with in the past? Who have you interacted with in the past
mhm,
that you can collaborate with?
mhm,
Maybe it's a link exchange, maybe it's just a mention or a citation or something.
mhm.
But I also want to talk about social signals. Everybody is talking about Reddit, harping on reviews, that reviews
Yeah.
are influencing a lot. What sort of
Mhm.
social signals are you seeing that are being the most effective? And do you have any specific strategies that you're using at Optics in order to capitalize on those social signals?
Sure, yeah. So we know that social signals are important for brand visibility. That's kind of a given. You mentioned Reddit.
Hmm.
Some interesting conversations I'm sure we could have about Reddit.
Uh,
But we know that there is this kind of partnership between Reddit and Google. So it surfaces their
mm,
content. I think the figure is around 40 to 45% of the time in terms of using Reddit as a source for responses generated within AI overviews.
hmm,
There's obviously a bit of a question mark there in terms of its accuracy. I think social signals are great for maintaining that consistent brand messaging. That's
hmm,
something that we spoke about being really key to ensuring that your brand is consistently mentioned across these platforms, and that extends to social as well. I would say LinkedIn probably being one of the bigger players in terms
mm,
of its influence on brand visibility within AI search, particularly because we can utilize personal brand. I find that's
hmm,
quite often very underutilized in terms of promoting your overall brand trust. So we're fortunate at the Optics that we've got several members. I mean, we've been going, just over 25 years. So we've got, a lot of experience to shout about. Some of our,
yeah.
senior leaders kind of lean into that personal brand space quite heavily. So that's something that can definitely influence, you know, performance within AI search, because not only are these tools seeing a really great brand operating in this particular marketplace, this particular industry, but
Hmm.
oh, hang on, we've got all of these really experienced people behind the brand as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
just building on those layers of trust, which are really, really important. So there's definitely, something to consider with social signals. I would say kind of the biggest thing is probably just that consistency, that brand messaging. And then of course we have reviews, that sort of I guess, ties in with things like case studies, testimonials. If you can show your audience, if you can show these tools that not only do we have these services, these products, whatever our business is focused on, we've got all of these great people we've been serving for years. They're speaking very highly of us. That again
Mm.
just continues to build that brand trust, which is just so important.
And to have a system that reaches out for reviews, making sure that your work doesn't just exist in a vacuum, but that other people know about it. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think, at DWS, we deal with a lot of agencies. We partner with a lot of
Mhm.
agencies,
Mm.
and the personal brand thing is really interesting because you're right. I see a lot of LinkedIn content being surfaced in
Oh,
SERPs and AI overviews and
yeah.
LLMs. And the separation between a personal brand and an entity, I think the gap is bridging. It almost
Mm.
seems like if
Mhm.
you as a leader can talk about your brand about the same thing that your clients are searching for, like you almost double the surface area for your product and service to be discovered. Do you guys do any? I mean, do you talk about personal brand internally at Optics?
Mhm. Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's something that we try and champion as much as
Mm,
possible. Obviously, I know some people prefer, like posting on LinkedIn more than others and like
uh
sharing on
huh.
social more than others. It's, it comes naturally to some people, whereas it might not do others. But yeah, it's something that we champion internally for sure. We want to be seen as thought
Mm,
leadership individuals within our own space. That's also very important for us. We're trying to generate, new business and continue to push optics to the forefront of people's minds. And we do that, through personal brand
hmm.
as well. And it's something that I try and talk about in talks I give not only to businesses, but ones that I give to other marketers as well, in terms of how they can improve their approach. And personal brand is something that they should very much be considering because, like you say, that connection between personal individuals and brand and business is definitely becoming tighter. It's definitely becoming closer.
Yeah.
If somebody can connect a really great piece of content or some, great insights that you're sharing, they can connect it to you personally, that then connects to your business and your brand.
Mm.
AI search and these tools are clever enough to do a similar kind of thing. So yeah, personal brand is severely underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Underrated is a great term. And obviously you're active on LinkedIn. I'm curious as an agency, and maybe you're not the person to ask, so feel free to completely shut me down
Sure.
if this is a little bit overstepping. But I'm curious as an agency, what are your primary acquisition channels for your clients these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting in terms of where our clients come from. So we do quite well from a referral point of view. So
Hmm.
because we are an agency based in the Southwest, we don't necessarily have a global reach, although we do have several very large scale international clients. We do have some great work with referrals. We also spend a lot of time in terms of that thought leadership side of things. So as I mentioned, I'm regularly speaking, pretty much every couple of weeks or so at different talks, hosting webinars. Some of my colleagues are doing the same as well. We're trying to get in front of people as many as possible. So we host a number of different events as well. So we host things like a marketing directors kind of brunch and learn,
Hmm.
where we invite marketing directors from across the country and across the Southwest to attend to, yeah, kind of discuss their feelings and thoughts about the industry, where they see it going and how kind of optics can feed into that as well. So just trying to get, in front of people as much as possible. And I think we're fortunate that we've been going for a little while, so our reputation sort of has a good advantage there. But yeah, just
Hmm.
trying to communicate to people as much as possible what we do, but also trying to educate people as well. The webinars that we do, a number of them that we do for free. We offer a
Hmm.
free academy, which is sort of a short form training program for lower level marketers to attend to hone their skills as well. So trying to
Hmm.
connect with people as much as possible. And yeah, we seem to get kind of business from a few different places, really.
I love that. Sometimes even holding the space or facilitating a conversation is enough to build brand presence and
Mm.
brand awareness. I thought it was funny that you said, we host these brunch and learns for CMOs, or I can't remember the specific role that you mentioned, to
Mhm.
talk about their feelings. And it just brought to mind, like, dude, it's so right. Like,
Mm.
people have different feelings about these. It's not just about strategy, but it's like, how do I deal with my evolving role in
Mhm.
this new AI first world? So I was thinking
Yeah.
that, maybe being a group therapist, a group marketing therapist
Yeah.
has its own brand development and its own credence.
Yeah.
What are you I'm curious how you are viewing your role evolve, if you could project yourself out 2 to 5 years in the future,
Mm.
how do you see your role evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the last sort of I've been in marketing and SEO for just over 11 years now. And I think the last sort of 12, maybe 18 months has certainly been the biggest change in terms of kind of my approach to search and SEO. I mean, it's a reflection of how, much has changed in that period. So,
Hmm.
I'm certainly seeing over the next couple of years, which I guess is more shorter term, that sort of continuing in terms of continuing to try and educate people, continuing to try and, integrate AI search into marketing strategies as kind of a concrete pillar that people need to be considering. And then longer term, I suppose it's sort of holistically looking at, how businesses approach that world. I don't think that AI search and these tools are going anywhere anytime soon at all. There's no evidence to suggest that's happening. So
Hmm.
it's just about ensuring that kind of businesses understand that, how they can utilize these tools as well to facilitate, longer term growth from their side as well. And yeah, just trying to help people kind of stay on top of, everything that's changing so rapidly.
Hmm. The tool development is an interesting take because there's new vibe coded tools and
Hmm.
new, I guess, solutions for specific challenges and use cases within the role
Hmm.
popping up every day. And then if we take that logic, as the role develops, there will continue to be exponentially more tools that solve the new challenges that are approaching. So
Hmm.
I would imagine that in the future, like the skill of a marketer will be understanding how to coordinate and kind of orchestrate all the different tools that help them solve the
Hmm.
problems in their role. What do you think is the main skill gap that you would see in marketers that you talk to today?
Yes, it's a great point. I feel like we're almost approaching, too many tools.
Yeah.
There's certainly,
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement. Is that there you can have too much of a good thing. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest skill gap is firstly understanding how these tools actually work. Everyone
Mhm.
can type in something into Google or ChatGPT or Gemini, for example. Type in that query, type in that question, and see a result. But actually understanding how exactly is that tool arriving at that result? How is it processing that information? How is it
Mhm.
training itself on new data sets? That's probably one of the biggest areas where I see that knowledge being a little bit less across marketers is actually taking that first step of understanding exactly how those tools work. The reason why there are so many people who are pretty good at SEO from a Google point of view is because we've spent years at least trying to understand how Google works, what it prefers, what it likes. We need to reach that
Mhm.
with these AI tools as well. So I think that's probably the biggest knowledge gap. And then it's just, that element of kind of, going back to the beginning around GEO and AEO, how that is evolving from traditional SEO. What different things do we need to be doing and do we need to be thinking about is kind of part two of that. So I think, for anyone out there who, is looking to become a bit more familiar with improving brands within AI search, integrating AI into marketing strategies, I certainly would start with, simply understanding exactly how these tools work, how they're producing results, how they are responding to user queries, and then thinking how to integrate that into a search strategy.
And I would imagine the AI training available from Optix is a great place to start with that,
It is. Yes, it
right?
is. Yeah, we have a specific module on exactly how LLMs work, how they retrieve information. It's led by our data lead Samantha, who is a particular expert in that space. So yeah,
Mm.
we ensure we cover that within our training.
Nice. But you do bring up a good point that over the last 20 years, it's not just about search engine optimization. The marketers I feel who are really winning are the ones that understand not just how to optimize, but why they are optimizing that way. It's
Mm-hmm.
because the algorithm is surfacing these sort of authority signals and combining it with these keyword clusters and mapping intent. And
Hmm.
it's a great point to understand how these LLMs are working, how they're grounded,
Hmm.
what sources they're pulling from, and then make strategy and then make the optimization decisions. Yeah,
Yeah,
man, I I,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
I
you're
love.
spot on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think when we're developing strategies around AI search, right now and going forwards, a big thing is we're providing recommendations that all businesses should do this, brands should do this, you need to do this on your website. We do obviously get the question of why, quite justifiably. So we need to
Yeah.
be able to answer that, right? We need to be able to say, oh, it's because AI tools prefers information and content in this structure. It's because we need to develop this brand trust because AI tools do this and do that. So yeah, that element of kind of explaining why we're doing these things because we understand how these tools work, yeah, is a kind of key, absolutely key piece of the puzzle.
And honestly, it can also like being well versed in the tools and the behind the scenes, kind of like how the sausage is made, if you will, can help you win more deals. if you're able to just explain it instead of just saying this is the strategy, trust us. It's like, no, here's actually why we do it. Joe, as we wrap up the conversation here, where can we learn more about you, more about Optix, and do you have a talk that's coming up that we should know about?
Sure, yeah. So everyone is more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place to reach out to me, regularly sharing updates, and not only, news and sort of changes happening across the AI search world, but also upcoming talks and things like that. I have a couple of talks, a couple of webinars lined up over the next couple of months. I have a couple of in-person talks that are sort of happening in the background as well. Yeah, hopefully going to come off and they'll get the opportunity to kind of speak to more people in person. And then in terms of Optix, yeah, we're obviously based in the southwest of the UK. Our website's probably the best point of contact to get in touch with us across anything that you need with regards to strategic marketing. We are well versed and more than happy to help. Yeah, hopefully I can connect with more of you in the future.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your over a decade's worth of experience in whatever engine optimization you want to consider, and then being on the cutting edge with how things are changing, not only in the algorithms, but also how it impacts brands and their strategies and how it impacts the actual people behind the marketing and behind all the tech. So I appreciate you, Joe, for being here, and I hope to talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.